welcome back to another Questions for the Rector. I'm your host, Stephen Heiner, and with us is the Rector of Most Holy Trinity Seminary here in Reading, Pennsylvania, His Excellency Bishop Donald Sanborn. Hello, Your Excellency.
Hello, Stephen.
Well, we're going to be talking about the news of the moment, which is, of course, the firing of Bishop Joseph Strickland, which has triggered a tsunami of tears among the Novus Ordo conservatives and even some of the traditionalists. And we wanted to make sure that we had a chance to hear your view on this. I wanted to just go back a little bit in time to 2020, in which Strickland had said that the release of news regarding the McCarrick case was too slow and this was evil. But the line that I want to take from there is he said that Francis could go ahead and fire him if that was going to be a problem, which is, I suppose, prophetic words back in October of 2020.
Yes, it shows a certain boldness, and I would say underneath that there is you can see a serious dissatisfaction with Bergoglio. That he would say that. I mean, the information about McCarrick was slow coming. Yes, that's bad, obviously, but to say, well, he can fire me if he wants, indicates that there's more to it really than simply a slow information. You get the feeling that he's starting to boil inside concerning Bergoglio.
It continues that in the same interview, he described that both the Vatican and the United States had a deep state, and that the church is weak and the church is, quote, not clear given Pope Francis's support for civil unions. He says, Pope Francis's opinion on this, and I think, is confusing and very dangerous.
Well, he's obviously trying to protect the quote-unquote papacy of Bergoglio by saying that something was confusing and dangerous. Those things are not calling a spade a spade. It's an abomination that you should in any way bless unions that are contrary to nature. It's an abomination. It's not something confusing or dangerous. But deep state, the problem is at the head. Whenever you have an organization, they appoint people. If they have a deep state, well, who appointed the deep state? It is not as if Bergoglio has a record of being a wonderful archbishop in Buenos Aires and somebody who was conservative. He was radical from the beginning. When he was elected, Bishop Fleece was from Buenos Aires. I said, what do you think about him? He just shook his head. He said, very, very bad. So he knew who he was. And so the problem is at the head. But these people try to, types like Strickland try to protect the integrity of the papacy. And you understand that. Now, they are coming from the point of view that the Novus Ordo is something acceptable. It's maybe not as good as what was, but it's acceptable Catholicism. But they see the threats to it by these radical statements of Bergoglio, and they're disturbed by that. You didn't get, well, they thought you didn't get that so much in the so-called reigns of JP2 and Benedict XVI. They did, but they washed them away. Or whitewashed them and didn't
covered
pay
them in copes and maniples and red shoes.
Yes, but there were plenty of things that were objectionable to the faith in those under those two quote-unquote pontificates.
So I showed you this tweet some weeks ago when this issue was starting to boil. This was a tweet, you can call it now a post on the site called X. I believe Pope Francis is the Pope, but it is time for me to say that I reject his program of undermining the deposit of faith. Follow Jesus.
Well, that statement is loaded. That is a declaration of war on Bergoglio. The primary duty of a pope is to protect the deposit of faith. For him to say that he is undermining the deposit of faith is to strike a blow right at the heart of Bergoglio. It is to say that implicitly that he is not the Pope. I would compare it to this. Suppose a captain of a ship said, suppose a subordinate on a ship said, the captain wants to blow this ship up. That ruins, if that's true, it ruins the authority of that captain, because his first obligation is the safety of the ship. All authority has what we call an essential order to the good of the community over which you are placed. An essential order, so that if you intend some essential evil for that community, you lose your authority, because your authority is ordered to the good. See, so it'd be one thing if he said Bergoglio is immoral. Let's say, for an example, that he doesn't behave as the way he should. That is not an essential defect in a pope. That is bad, but it's not an essential defect. An essential defect which would ruin his authority is that he is not upholding the deposit of faith. That is job number one for the Pope. Of all the other things he does, that is the most important, that he retain the deposit of the faith. So for him to say that is very, very significant. And it is a declaration of war upon Bergoglio. And then follow Jesus as if you can't follow the Pope, but you can follow Jesus. That puts a dichotomy between Christ and the vicar of Christ. Something's got to give there. It sounds like Protestantism, that the vicar of Christ has erred and that he has taught false doctrines, etc. And now we have to follow Jesus. We have to look at the Bible, or we have to somehow get our information other than from the church, than from the Pope, because we can't trust him. Which, of course, is true. I mean, it says we can't trust Bergoglio with Catholic doctrine. That's true. But for him to say that, he's avoiding the obvious conclusion from what he said, and that is, that man is not the Pope. It's the obvious conclusion, but he doesn't want to go there. And he said, I think he's the Pope, but he's undermining the deposit of faith. I think he's the captain of the ship, but I know that he wants to blow this ship up. It just makes no sense whatsoever. So, I think he needs to do some reflecting about what he said. And if we pretend for a moment that Bergoglio is a true pope, and that he is protecting the deposit of faith, for us a bishop to say that about him merits the bishop's removal. You could not tolerate that in the episcopate, that some bishop is saying you are not doing your fundamental and essential job. No, of course not.
You couldn't even tolerate it in a secular business that one of your managers would say that.
No, it's undermining the papacy. So if we pretend for a moment that Bergoglio is a true pope, he had no other choice than to remove him.
Well, and you said it was a declaration of war. That was heard because in June, the next month, an apostolic visitation was ordered. For our viewers and our listeners who don't know what an apostolic visitation is, can you give a quick sketch, Your Excellency?
Yeah, it's something in canon law which means you're in big trouble. All right, that's what for example, there was an apostolic visitation of a cone in 1974, and I was interviewed by those visitors.
So you know what it's like to be in big trouble.
Yes, it was, and then a cone was condemned by Paul VI shortly after that. So it means that the Vatican is very, very concerned and upset with what you're doing and saying, so it's just it's like the man in the black cape knocking at the door.
Well, unsurprisingly, and if they have the agenda, we're going to find something bad, and we're going to use that against you. In September, there started to be rumors of a resignation. In October of this year, there was some defiance on his part. He said he was not going to resign. He's been given this charge by Benedict XVI. There's even a reference. Strickland had read out a letter that Pope Francis is a, quote, usurper of Peter's chair, unquote, and, quote, an expert at producing cowards, unquote. Unsurprisingly, November the 9th, not too long after, he's asked to resign. He does not. And November the 11th, he's fired.
Yeah, usurper of Peter's chair, again, is another atomic missile to Rome. I mean, if he's a usurper, that means he's false. What else are we to conclude? He's a false pope.
You can't conclude that, Your Excellency. That's the one thing you cannot conclude.
You're a usurper. So, if for him to, let's say, be surprised about his removal, or he has, as I said, declared ecclesiastical war on Bergoglio, and he needs to see it through, in my opinion.
Well, you've been using the term war. That was as part of the tsunami of tears. Michael Matt posted, "This is total war. Francis is a clear and present danger, not only to Catholics the world over, but also to the whole world itself. It appears now that he is actively trying to bury fidelity to the Church of Jesus Christ. Let him be anathema."
Well, again, that says it all. How can you be a pope if you're anathema?
And how can a layman declare a
Yes,
pope anathema?
yes. I mean, these are the people that would not let Archbishop Vigano's video be seen at their conference in Pittsburgh because he gave all the logic of saying that Bergoglio was not the pope without actually saying it. Because I watched it. He gave all of the logic. That was banned. All right. Now Bergoglio is anathema, and all the things that you said. I mean, what's left? I mean, they're frying this creature in Rome, and why are they not sedevacantists? That's the next stop on the train, and it's a very short ride.
It's impermissible. It's an impermissible stop. Right. The hilariously named Lepanto Institute put out some posts, and they were corrected by the community notes feature on X, which hilariously just cited catechism. So the post was, "Like a Soviet-era dictator and in a raw exercise of power without provision of law, Pope Francis has removed Bishop Joseph Strickland as Bishop of Tyler, Texas." And the readers added context. "Misleading, implies irregularity or illegality under Catholic rule/Vatican law. The Catholic Church doctrine of papal supremacy is over 1,000 years old. The Pope has, quote, full, supreme, and universal power over the whole Church, a power which he can always exercise unhindered." Not bad for some people on the internet. Obviously, that 1,000 years thing isn't right, but
no, it's 2,000 years plus. Well, I guess 33 A.D. might be it. The Pope has supreme power over the entire Church. He is not subject to canon law, so you can't cite any law against him. Now, we're assuming or making this, silly assumption for the moment that Bergoglio is the Pope. You can't cite any law. He is not bound to any laws. He is not bound to any process. He is a supreme head of the Church. His word is law. If you deny that, you are not a Catholic. You cannot. It's not some sort of democratic process that we're used to in this country, and what they call rule of law and all of that. That's a whole other thing. But the Catholic Church is what we call a temperate monarchy, and the only thing that he's tempered by is the Catholic faith. In other words, he must be faithful to the Catholic faith, and he must confirm, as our Lord said, the brethren. That is, he must confirm the faithful in the faith, and that's the problem here, and that's what Bishop Strickland is accusing him of, that he's not confirming the faithful, and so he's not doing his essential job, so those comments are silly, that he's a dictator or this is something that he cannot really do. It's just false. It's just false.
Well, we're put in the strange position of they allow him to, in a way, destroy the faith, but they won't allow him to make an administrative decision. No. This is all that it is. It wasn't, there's no doctrine involved. No, you're fired. The Pope could fire you because he doesn't like your haircut. Yes. That's it. And he doesn't even have to give you a reason. He could send you a telegram.
That's right.
And so the Lepanto Institute responded, really? The Pope is a dictator who has the authority to exercise unlimited power without due process? And Community Notes responded, Catholic doctrine of papal supremacy allows for the Pope to exercise full, supreme, and universal power over the Catholic Church unhindered. As a Catholic, Bishop Joseph Strickland counts as being a member of the Catholic Church.
That's right. That's right. All of his power, again, is assuming for a moment that Bergoglio is the Pope, which he isn't, but just for the sake of argument, all of his power derives from the Roman Pontiff. It is the teaching of the Church that the power of the bishop to rule his diocese is from Christ, but it is given to him by the Roman Pontiff. Pope Pius XII was clear about that.
I sent you a note that there's going to be a march on Tyler this weekend on Saturday, and
I can't make it.
I think you might be busy this weekend.
I'm busy. No, that's silly. You don't march against decisions of the Pope. You don't.
What a strange
Pope
concept.
Is the Pope. And here we're the ones that people say, oh, they're against the Pope. Here, the Pope is the Pope.
You need to follow him.
I know. If you say he's the Pope, well, then go to the new Mass, because if he's the Pope, he cannot, by the principle of indefectibility and infallibility, prescribe something to the whole Church that is wrong. So if you're saying that man is the Pope, you have no business going to an illicit traditional Mass.
We were trying to find out what Strickland's response was, and we had a chance to watch this part of a video interview. You could only make it through the first 4 minutes. I encouraged you, Your Excellency, let's listen to a couple more minutes. Maybe we'll hear something of substance. We didn't. Could you summarize those first few minutes for people?
Well, after the declaration of war, I was expecting to hear a calm, reasonable description of what happened, and that this is my position, and I even understand why he removed me, because my position is incompatible with his being the Pope. In other words, obviously, if he's the Pope, he cannot tolerate me after I've said that, unless I retract it, and I don't want to retract it. That's what I thought he was going to say. But he said, I don't know why he removed me, which I found very hard to believe because of all of the things I just said. And, the boldness in which he said these things in the past. I mean, it was bold.
Fire me if you want to.
Fire me if you want. So I found it very hard to believe that he didn't know why he was removed. And then he went on a big, long stream of consciousness about saying prayers and the Rosary and the Sacred Heart, and which was all very nice, but it didn't address the problem. Of course, we should pray. We should pray for Pope Francis and so forth. We should pray for his conversion. That's but it's just as if everything's okay, and it's like Pius XII is there, and we're having really no serious problem here. That was the.
I'm just going to offer up this hardship.
Yeah. And I'm at peace, and.
He had a crackling fire behind him, I think a cup of tea or something.
Yeah, it was exactly the opposite of the warrior that I expected him to be for a good cause. Now, I think, he has not done enough homework. I think he thinks that Benedict XVI was a great pope and John Paul II was a great pope. And I think he's convinced that there's nothing wrong with Vatican II. I get that impression. And that the whole problem is Bergoglio. It's not it's not Vatican II and the post-Vatican II popes. So I think he needs to reflect and to pray and to do some homework because he's on the right track. But I was very taken aback by that reaction that he had.
Well, if we had endured a few more minutes, we would have heard him say he was uncertain of the exact reason he was removed from office, except, quote, I've threatened some of the powers that be with the truth of the gospel.
Well, the Pope is the power that is. He is not the power that be. There's one power in Rome, and that is the power of the Pope. Everybody else is merely helping him to govern the Church, and all of their power derives from him. He picks them personally, as we know, and puts them in office. So you can't. Again, it's this avoiding the central problem, the elephant in the room. This man is not the Pope. And he's, again, just like Archbishop Vigano, he's saying all the logic for it not as well as Archbishop Vigano, but he's saying all the logic for saying this man is the Pope, but he is not drawing that essential conclusion, which really solves the whole problem, to just say it. And if a number of bishops came out and said that, it would give it great impetus and credibility.
The way that he finished was to say that we all need to pray for the, quote, deep, abiding conversion of Pope Francis and all of us to a deeper relationship with the Sacred Heart of Christ.
Yeah, conversion to the Catholic faith. Yes, I think that would be a wonderful thing. As I have said, I think recently, if he were to convert, he is so strong-willed, that man. If he were to convert, he would solve the whole problem in the church. Something like a St. Paul.
I know when you gave me that image in one of our last conversations, I couldn't help thinking about it later because it's so absurd and ridiculous for me to think of it. But as you say, who would have thought that the murderer of St. Stephen would be, and I think one of the fathers has said this is the grace obtained by St. Stephen during his martyrdom was the conversion of St. Paul. And what a grace it would require. And I suppose that is one lesson we can take. We continue to pray for the conversion of not only, let's say, people like, the conversion of Francis, but let's say the further enlightenment of people like Archbishop Vigano, etc.
Yes, of course. I mean, you always pray for the conversion of heretics and schismatics and so forth. I mean, the church does. But he especially should be prayed for. The grace of God is stronger than any sin or any attachment to sin. And he could be converted. So that's correct to pray for him. It's just I think that Bishop Strickland pulled back from the battlefield where he should have been present in that reaction that he had. It was disappointing.
So I think your message to Bishop Strickland, if he happens to watch this video, is that he needs to do a bit more homework on Vatican II and not be as focused on the personal heresies of Bergoglio. That's not really the issue.
Yes, Bergoglio is merely, and as he said he would, merely drawing out Vatican II to its conclusions and it's everything that it implies and everything that it was meant to do. That's what he said practically the first day that he was elected. And he said something like the others were afraid to do this, meaning his predecessors were afraid to do this, but I'm going to do this. I'm paraphrasing, but he said something to that effect. So yes, I think Bishop Strickland is on the right track, but I think he has to pursue and be consistent with everything that he has said so far.
Well, thanks for taking the time to address this. As always, watchers, listeners to this, if you want to submit questions to His Excellency, you can just put the hashtag questions for the rector in social media, and we will get to it as quickly as we can. We can't avoid it if there are news stories that usurp the regular order of questions. But until next time, thank you for your time, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Stephen.